Hi, this is Tony Robbins. Welcome to Live with Passion. Listen, first, I really want to congratulate you on taking the time to listen to this program and for investing in it. And I say that not because you've invested in my date program, but because there's so many people out there that talk a really great game, but they don't live it. You know what I mean? So many people out there say, I want a greater life. I want to achieve this great goal. I have this great dream. I want to turn it into reality. But what do? Usually nothing. Usually day after day, they don't make any real progress towards achieving those goals. They're not investing in themselves in solutions and tools and into ideas that can make a difference. So I want to really congratulate you because you're one of the few who do versus the many who talk. And for that reason, I feel a real kinship with you because what you're doing right now, I've been doing myself for more than 21 years now. What do I mean? Well, I'm talking about listening to audio tapes, attending seminars, reading books, feeling my mind, and then applying what I've learned immediately to get results in my life. And it all started for me many, many years ago, but it started in a day when I finally got fed up, when I finally said, I'm not willing to settle for less than I can be. Never again. And when I found that internal passion, when I made that shift in my life, I've never looked back since then. And that's why this subject means so much to me and why I'm so thrilled that it means enough for you to take the time to really listen to this audio program. So I want to get started, but before I do, let me also say this. You and I are probably a lot more alike than you realize. I mean, think about it. We're both crazy, outrageous people that are saying, I will not settle for less than I can be or do or feel or experience in my life. I mean, if you think about it, there's really a big difference between just merely achieving your goals and living a life of passion. I mean, where you love your life, where you love your career, you love your family, your friends, the people around you, where you look forward to each and every day. Maybe ultimate passion is when you can get to that point where no matter what happens in your life, even when the biggest challenge happens, even when the greatest injustices occur, you just grab a hold of them and you suck the juice out of that experience. You say to yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I apply this? You find a way to use whatever life gives you to create a life of even greater meaning. Now, by the way, is that what most people do? Well, you and I both know the answer is no. I mean, every day you look around and walk around and you see people around you that look half dead. I mean, it makes me sad. There seems to be no joy in their life. There's no drive in these people. They're kind of just surviving. It's like somewhere along the line, they settled for so much less than they could be. And maybe it happened many years ago. Maybe years ago they had great goals and great dreams and a great drive for a life of meaning. But what happened to them? Well, what almost happened to me, what may have happened at one time in your life. They had big goals, they had big dreams, they went for it, they were excited, and they pushed hard. Maybe they disciplined themselves. Maybe they gave their all, and they were disappointed or maybe even betrayed. I know I felt that many times in my life, and I'm sure you have as well. But what do you do with that? That's what determines whether you develop a passionate life or one that you have to constantly make excuses for, or one where inside of you, you have to settle and say, those people out there that are so excited, so passionate, oh, it's phony, it's fake, it's just a bunch of positive thinking. See, what happens for a lot of people is they don't want to be disappointed anymore. So what they do is they disassociate. They start saying, oh, don't get your hopes up. Hey, don't get overly excited about this stuff. Come on, what are you, naive? They become skeptical. They become pessimistic. But the truth is, when people say they're skeptical or they're pessimistic, what they're really saying is, I'm fearful. I mean, people who are skeptical are just afraid of being disappointed. They're afraid of being hurt. They're afraid to feel that feeling that comes from not winning. But listen to me. In any sport, if you're going to be victorious, you've got to be willing to risk that loss, that sense of pain. That also, by the way, that pain may be the very thing that gives you the drive to move forward and achieve more than you ever have before in your life. Michael Jordan is someone I've had the privilege of spending some time with. I mean, talk about a genius in the basketball ring. I'm genius in any sport. He's the best that probably has ever existed there. And when I talked to him the first time, I said, listen, Michael, tell me, your career's had many highs, but when did it just explode to the highest level? I mean, to where you knew your game was at its best. He said, Tony, the biggest thing that's driven me, honestly, was pain. He said, when I lost for the third time in those championships to the Detroit Pistons, he said, it ripped out my soul. It hurt so bad inside. He said, I sat there and I cried on the bus. I felt like somebody had stolen my pride. I felt like no one else had given as much as I had. I felt so bad inside. And you know what happened? Something inside of me just shifted. He said, I just was tired of feeling that way. And I decided I was going to go out that summer and I was going to lift weights and become stronger than I ever had been before. And the next year I was going to dish out the pain. I wasn't going to take it. That we were going to win no matter what. He said, I converted all of that pain into absolute drive. And you know what happened. He won 3 national championships in a row for the Bulls. Took a little break from basketball and came back and did it again. I mean, that's real passion. Finding a way inside yourself when you're exhausted, when you're beat, when someone else seems to have more power or more skill or they're having more luck. And somehow you reach down inside and you convert the pain into power, into drive. Results in life don't come from being motivated. Results in life come from taking action, and that's where the rubber really meets the road. That's where the results really show up. So at the end of each of these tapes, don't just turn the tape off. Use the skill that you learn in that tape all day long. Now, I realize some of these skills will be brand new for you. Most of them probably will be. And when you're new at something, you're not good at it yet. But you know what? Do it anyway, even if you fumble at it. It's okay. Because if you'll take it all day long and apply that skill, I can promise you something. By the end of the day, you'll get good. And when you get good, you'll get results. And those results will reinforce you. And that reinforcement will make these things habits. And pretty soon, this idea of living with passion will be something that is just who you are, not something you work out or think about or dream about or desire. It'll be your experience of life. It'll be a positive addiction. It'll make your life greater and greater with each passing day. And by the way, I want you to know that I respect you. I know your life must already be great, or you wouldn't be pursuing ways to make it better. But I want to make sure that by the end of these 6 tapes, there is a measurable difference in the quality of the levels of joy and happiness and passion, and most importantly, results that you experience in your life. So let's get started. Let's not waste any more time. Let's begin to tap into those skills, into those understandings that can give us an even greater quality of life, an extraordinary life, a life filled with passion. Let us begin. The term I have for this session and the tool I want to share with you, I call it quality quantifiers. In fact, the term is much more technical than the actual tool itself, but I think it's an accurate term to describe what we're going to learn. And by the way, this tool is not so much that it's new or so innovative. It's just that once we're aware of it, it can change our life. Now, here's how it came about. Recently, I was putting together a brand new program called The Body You Deserve. And as I was designing the program, I got to the point of thinking about, okay, let's deal with one of the problems with people trying to lose weight, which is just the sense that they've got to have something now. You know that state where you feel like if you don't have it now, you're going to explode? I don't know if you've ever experienced that or not. Maybe not around food, maybe around something else. And I began to look at the dynamic of how that makes people overeat and try to identify what the cause was, so in one of the days I could really help them create a solution. And as I thought about it, okay, for someone to actually overeat, what has to happen first? First, they got to be triggered. And by the way, isn't this true of any behavior you want to change? Whether it's smoking or drinking, or whether it's getting frustrated or mad or angry or overwhelmed, something triggers us initially. So what kinds of things can trigger us? Well, it can be something internally triggered by us asking ourselves a question or focusing on something internally, or it can be an external cue. It can be something that we see or hear, something someone says, maybe a smell that triggers us. As soon as we're triggered, we go into a state. And when people overeat, I began to ask myself, what is the state they're in when they really overeat? I mean, when they gotta have that food. I realized it was a state of tremendous urgency, that the person felt like they gotta have it right now. And as I began to explore that, I thought, well, what's creating this state of urgency in people? What's making them have to have that food right now? And I began to realize it was a sense of scarcity. Suddenly this person began to feel if they didn't have something right now, they were going to miss out. They were going to be deprived. They weren't going to have what they really wanted most. And as I began to explore this, I said, okay, well, if somebody gets where they feel like they're missing out, human beings will do almost anything to avoid what? Pain. And missing out, being deprived, is major pain for most people in our culture. In fact, scarcity is what drives so many of our desires in this culture. The more scarce some things are, the more we want them. I mean, that's the challenge. When most people want to lose weight, what do? They try and deprive themselves. They say, I can't have this food that makes me feel good. What we really want is just to change the way we feel. And if someone thinks like they can't have that anymore, that just drives them crazy. It's the very same drive, by the way, that made people come across an ocean, risk their lives to come to the New World, to get something called gold. Why do they want this little pretty metal? Why was it in such demand? Because it was scarce. Scarcity drives human beings crazy, whether it be in diamonds or in relationships. Some people, when they really want to be in a relationship with somebody and they don't think it's possible, boy, they really want to be with this person. They find this drive. They'll do anything. They'll take care of that relationship. They make it the priority. But once they're in the relationship, what happens? For some people, the law of familiarity begins to set in. They start to take for granted what's so close to them. Pretty soon, what they wanted is no longer scarce. They're around this person so much that they begin to take them a little bit for granted. So after a while, we'll see this relationship begin to deteriorate. But you know what's interesting, including in a relationship? If suddenly somebody else gets interested in this person they're in a relationship with, very often the person is no longer so familiar. All of a sudden they're a scarce resource again. All of a sudden the person starts paying attention. It's an interesting dynamic that we human beings have around this thing called scarcity. And boy, if there's any place it shows up, it sure does in food. So I was thinking, all right, how do you do this? How do you turn this around? And I can only tell you my own experience. I can give an experience of how scarcity was driving my family for a while. One day, our chef came home with a special treat after dinner. It was these fat-free cookies. And they were supposed to have no sugar, but you know what? Most things like that taste like cardboard. But these things were absolutely incredible. We were so excited after we had these cookies that sure enough, I came back into the kitchen about 30 minutes later to have one of these cookies, and the whole box was gone. Everybody had hit the kitchen and wiped the thing out. Well, you can't imagine what that did to my desire for these cookies. All of a sudden, I wanted them more than anything on earth. And I was real frustrated, so I said, hey, tomorrow, go get a couple of boxes of these things. Sure enough, the next day, she came back in. I walked in there. She'd gotten 2 boxes, and they were already empty by the time I got home. I said, I want to make sure I had some of these cookies. Now I can't have them at all. I said, tomorrow, I tell you what I want you to do. Get 25 boxes of these cookies. I want you to fill up this entire cupboard, because when I come in here, I want to be able to cookie when I want it. So sure enough, the next day I come in, and there are 23 boxes there. 2 are already gone. But I said, I don't care. At least I got 23 boxes here left. And I went in there and had about a half a box of cookies, maybe 3/4 of a box. But the bottom line is when I was done, I felt satisfied, I thought. Sure enough, the next day I came in, and there were still a few boxes gone, but there's still plenty of cookies in there, so I had a few. By the 3rd day, I had maybe 1. By the 4th day, I was like, there are plenty of cookies here. There'll always be here. You know what's fascinating? I wasn't the only one who behaved differently once there were plenty of cookies. I noticed all of a sudden, a month later, there were still 20 boxes of darn cookies sitting in there. In fact, 2 months later, there was mold growing all over these cookies. No one had ever touched them because there were so many of them. They were so available. They were like sick of them. See, scarcity does interesting things to us, and having a sense of abundance also changes the way we respond to things. Now, you say, well, Tony, what has this got to do with this thing called quality quantifiers? Everything. See, what I was searching for at the time was to give people a tool that would help them to get out of that state of urgency, that state where you're crazy, where you got to have it right now or you're going to go nuts. You know the kind of state I'm talking about, right? And as I began to do that, trying to figure out a tool for it, I thought, you know what? We all create this emotion. We create this feeling of urgency, like I got to do it now. I got to have it now. But we feel like it's something outside of ourselves, something outside of us that's triggering us. And that state of urgency doesn't last forever. So I thought, how could I give people a sense that they're in control of this? So in a moment, if you start to feel that urgency, you could wipe it out. So you could lower its intensity. And by the way, if you think of any behavior that's in your life that you want to change, it always starts out the same way. Something triggers you. You go into a state where you feel like you have to go to the 3rd step, take action. And oftentimes when you're in a state of urgency, you don't think things through. You just immediately act upon it, sometimes in an unconscious way. And by the way, every action you take takes you to the 4th step, which is consequences. And the bottom line is a lot of people have consequences in their life they don't like because they consistently take actions that are inappropriate, and they do that because they're in such a lousy state or because they feel overwhelmed or they feel like they have no choice.